page, how do we solve these problems? We have x squared minus 5 equals 0, x squared plus 4 equals 0, x squared plus 12 equals 0, and 2x squared minus 6 equals 0. These ones are cool because we can just solve this by doing square roots. So for instance, we can just get the x squared by itself. So here we would add 5 to both sides, and then x squared equals 5. And then how are we going to solve that? We're going to square root both sides. So this is going to give me x equals, now this is really important. This is super important here. We need a plus or minus, because if you square the negative square root of 5, it's still going to be 5, right? So we need to make sure that we have plus or minus anytime we solve with this method. Okay, now we have x squared plus 4 equals 0. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to subtract 4 on each side. X squared equals negative 4. Okay, our x squared is by itself. Our negative 4 is by itself. We have everything that we need on one side, right? But now we need to square root both sides. Okay, notice we have a negative under this square root. First, I'll say x equals plus or minus square root of negative 4. That's not good enough, right? When we have a negative under a square root, we always remember that we need to pull out an I. So x is going to equal plus or minus I square root 4, which equals plus or minus 2I. We'll review i's when I get back. If you're confused, just make a note that we need to review that. If you're not confused, cool. I want you to pause the video and do this one by yourself. Okay. Now, if you did not get this answer, put a star next to it and we'll talk about it. If you've forgotten how to simplify radicals, we can definitely go over that in class. Next, we have 2x squared minus 6 equals 0. This one's a little different. It's a little trickier, so we're going to go over it together. The first step, we're still looking to just get the x squared by itself. So our first step is going to be to add 6 to both sides. Okay, now we still want to get the x squared by itself. We're going to do this the same way we're just going to treat it like an x until it's by itself. So the next thing we want to do is divide both sides by 2. Then x squared equals 6 divided by 2, which would be 3. Now we square root both sides, and x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Okay, hopefully that made sense. If it did not, put a star next to it, and we'll talk about it when I get back. Now I want to go through these practices. So on our first page of notes, we looked at things in factored form. We know how to put things in factored form, right? So we are going to factor these and then apply the zero factor property. So first thing we always do is put it in standard form. We have the steps down here. Step 1, write the equation in standard form so that one side of the equation is 0. So that means we're going to just kind of move everything over. I'm going to start by moving my n's over. So then I have 2n squared. I subtract 5n from both sides. That gives me plus 2n equals 84. Now I'm going to subtract 84 on both sides. So 2n squared plus 2n minus 84 equals 0. We need it in this form in order to be able to apply the zero factor property. Now we're going to, first thing we do always is look for a GCF. What's the GCF of this? Okay, so we're going to pull out a 2. And then we have n squared plus n minus 42 equals 0. We can get rid of this 2. We don't even care about him. If you remember on the other page, whenever we divided that coefficient out, it just kind of disappeared. So we are just going to solve n squared plus n minus 42 equals 0. The first thing we need to do is multiply our a and our c. Our a is 1 and our c is negative 42. So we need to find the factors of negative 42 that are going to add up to be b, which is 1. So negative 42, there are a lot of factors of 42. The ones I always think of first are 7 and 6. If 7 is positive and 6 is negative, then this equals 1. So we're going to rewrite this as n squared plus 7n minus 6n minus 42 equals 0. Now we factor by grouping. So we're going to factor like this. We're going to make sure we throw that plus sign in the middle. Okay. Go ahead and pause the video and do this one on your own. Factor it on your own, and then we'll solve it together. Okay, here we are at n plus 7 times n minus 6 equals 0. I'm going to bring this back over here, and I'm just going to set each factor equal to 0, because that's what we do when we solve by factoring. So n plus 7 equals 0, and n minus 6 equals 0. And we solve for n in both of these equations. So we have to subtract 7 from both sides. And then we have to add 6 to both sides. So n equals negative 7, and then n equals 6. Okay, we're going to move on to number 8. I'm going to see if I can pull out different colors this time. See if we can make things a little more clear that way. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get this in standard form. So we have to move everything from this side over to this side. Everything from the left needs to move over to the right. Please pause your video and do that on your own. Okay, step 2, factor the polynomial completely. This will come up. I have complete faith that you guys can factor this completely on your own. So we're going to pause again, and I want you to try it on your own. Okay, it should be x plus 6 times x minus 5 equals 0. If you are making mistakes, go back and check your work. If you still can't figure out where your mistake is, then put a star next to it. We'll talk about it when I get back. Step 3 is set each factor containing a variable equal to 0. So we're going to go like this. X plus 6 equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0. And then we solve.